Welcome back in. Today we're discussing our week 4 must-add waiver wire play or ads of the week. Let's go ahead and get right to it. We're going to start with the quarterback position, and we're going to start here with Carson Wentz. Now the Vikings blew the doors off the Bengals today, 48-10. Wentz completed 14 of 20 passes for 173 yards and 2 touchdowns for 15 fantasy points, which really didn't need to do much in this game with the Bengals turning the ball over 5 times. But next up for the Vikings, they match up in Dublin against the Steelers. The Steelers have allowed the 5th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. And the Vikings offense will be getting some firepower back next week as well, with Jordan Addison coming back from his 3-game suspension. I think Wentz is a high-end QB2 against the Steelers. Next up here is going to be Bryce Young. And speaking of blowouts, which is kind of the theme for today, there was a lot of just lopsided games, a lot of defensive touchdowns, a lot of special teams touchdowns, which really kind of zapped some of the upside for some of these offenses. But Bryce Young, the Panthers blew out the Falcons today 30-0. Bryce Young only threw the ball 24 times. He completed 16 of 24 of 100 for 121 yards and added 2 carries for a rushing touchdown for 11 fantasy points. Obviously not a great day for Bryce Young, but they didn't really need to do a whole lot. Next up for the Panthers and Bryce Young is a matchup against the Patriots, who have allowed the 7th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. The Panthers have a nice run of matchups coming even after the Patriots. They get the Dolphins and the Cowboys after that, making Bryce Young a decent potential long-term ad, probably more of a 2 QB league type ad. But, if you're looking for a streaming option, Bryce Young, I think, is in a good spot. Next up is going to be Geno Smith. Now, if you just look at the box score, this was a great start for Geno Smith. He completed 19 of 29 for 289 yards and 3 touchdowns for 26 fantasy points. The bad, they lost 24-41. So a lot of this came in garbage time, but in fantasy football, we really don't care how it comes. Next up, though, is a matchup against the Bears defense that is extremely banged up. It has allowed the most fantasy points to quarterbacks through 3 weeks. So Geno Smith, I think, is in for another decent performance here. They're back at home here against the Bears. And so I don't mind Geno Smith. And lastly, Sam Darnold. In a theme of the week, the Seahawks throttled the Saints 44-13. Darnold only needed to throw the ball 18 times. He did complete 14 of those 18 passes for 218 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Seahawks have a short turnaround as they play Thursday Night Football against the Cardinals. And the Cardinals are a middling matchup as they allow the 13th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. So I think those are the options here, especially now that Daniel Jones has been rostered in like 70% of leagues now. So he's not really an option we're looking for. Let's move over to the running back position. And obviously the big news of the week is going to be the big injury to James Conner, who left with apparent injury. He was carted off the field after his ankle got pinned under him. Schefter reported that Conner season's over with an ankle injury. So I will say, though, after Conner left, Benson was the featured back. He played 74% of the snaps, ran 50% of the routes, and handled 7 of the 9 rush attempts from this backfield. Benson is easily the top waiver wire ad, and he's worth most of your fab. He's worth the number 1 waiver priority. Not many of these guys are going to come along, especially this early in the season, where we just know he is the locked-in RB1 for this offense. And Amari DiMercado got a couple touches. I would expect he probably mixes in at some point. But Trey Benson looks like he could end up being a big-time ad for a lot of people. Now, he is right there at that cutoff of 50%. So in a lot of competitive leagues, people already have him. But if he's not and he's sitting out there, he is definitely worth everything that you can go after to get him. This is the time to use that. Next up is going to be Blake Corum. While Kyron continues to handle the majority of the touches, Corum has started to chip away. Today, he handled 8 carries for 53 yards against the Eagles. I don't think he's going to take a significant amount of work from Kyron, as some have implied, thinking that Blake Corum is going to take the job from Kyron Williams. I don't think that's going to happen. I do think, though, he's starting to show some standalone value. Even more so, he's easily the direct backup for Kyron Williams. So if something happened to Kyron Williams, then this is a pretty easy spot when we know he's going to step right in. And we know Sean McVay offense is like, he's going to be the absolute workhorse if something happened to him. So Blake Corum is definitely worth an ad. Now, the handcuff plus guys here, Ollie Gordon, 19% rostered. After everyone dropped Gordon, he finally had a game with more than a handful of touches. He carried the ball 9 times for 38 yards and a touchdown. While Achane is definitely the lead back, Gordon could continue to see 8 to 10 touches and some goal line work, which is kind of what we liked about him heading into the year and kind of what we thought was going to happen. Now, the Dolphins have not played well. They finally had a really competitive game, and they decided to use Ollie Gordon in that fashion, and he was able to score a touchdown. So Ollie Gordon should be rostered. I want to talk about the Commanders' backfield Chris Rodriguez got the start today, but didn't really do much with it. He received 11 carries for 39 yards. McNichols had the best day, but he received 4 carries. However, he did rip off a 60-yard touchdown. Then you had Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. I still think he looks like the best running back in this backfield, and I don't think it's really close. He looks like the most explosive running back in this backfield. I don't know why we're doing this whole three-way committee, this slow play of Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, but it's only a matter of time before I think the ball. I think they're going to go all in on JCM, and so I actually think he's a pretty good buy low candidate if you can get him included into the trade where he just hasn't really taken off, or you might be able to go out and acquire him for cheaper than what you would think. And so he's the guy that I think that I would want to own from this backfield. But it is frustrating right now. I added Tajay Spears to this because he's only rostered in 30% of Yahoo leagues, and I think he's definitely worth a stash at this point because he's only, like I said, rostered in 30% of leagues, but there's only 1 week left. He's expected to return week 5. And so, let's not forget how explosive he was. I mean, down the stretch last year, over the last couple of weeks, he scored back-to-back weeks with 20 plus fantasy points. During preseason, there were a ton of buzz about him and how good he looked. And so it was a shame that he got hurt. But if he happens to be sitting out there in your league, I would roster him because you're only going to have to wait 1 more week, and then he should be back in week 5. So Tajay Spears, I think, is a definite stash option. And then I did want to mention Tyrone Tracy left with apparent shoulder injury, did not return. Now, Scotabo is the immediate beneficiary, but I do think Singletary could at least be something of an ad if you wanted to in deeper formats because he did get some work. He worked in here. I don't think this is going to be a situation where Scottaboo is going to handle all the touches from this backfield and be a true workhorse. So Singletary does make some sense, especially once we find out what exactly is going on with Tyrone Tracy. And as far as these other guys are concerned, again, these are just your typical handcuff, your typical guys that you're going to want to have on your benches. Let's move over to the wide receiver position here. And first, I have Elike Omaner at number 1 here, I think, as the best ad for wide receiver. And, in a lot of weeks, we've had guys that have had spike weeks, right? Trey Franklin. I think another one people are going to complain about why I have so low, a Trey Tucker this week, where Elike Omaner has just been consistent. He has now put up double-digit fantasy points in back-to-back games. He's become the clear target for Cam Ward, especially inside the red zone. He scored a touchdown in back-to-back weeks as well. While the schedule the Titans have faced through the first 3 weeks has been brutal, things should start to loosen up a little bit after the Texans in week 4, as they will get matched up against the Cardinals, Raiders, and Patriots. A.O. Manor should be a top waiver ad. Wide receivers continue to show he's drawing targets, which is the thing that I care most about, especially with rookie wide receivers. And I wouldn't be shocked if as the season goes on, he continues to work and continues to get more and more opportunities. And I think as this offense gels and gets better, and I think Cam Ward gets easier matchups, I think A.O. Manor can end up being something like a league winner here. At the very least, I think he is definite worth of a flex option and somebody that, with bye weeks now looming after week 4, that he is going to be somebody that we can look to plug in as a flex option on a lot of weeks. So A.O. Manor, for me, is the best option here and the best ad. Next up is going to be Darnell Mooney. The entire Falcons offense was dreadful. It's hard to take much from this game. However, we did see Darnell Mooney draw 11 targets in this game after missing most of the preseason and week 1. Mooney is now back and is the clear number 2 in this offense. Should get back to being the player he was last season. And remember, he was a top 36 wide receiver last year. So I do think Darnell Mooney should be rostered in more leagues. He's rostered in less than 50% of leagues now. Christian Kirk returned today, drew 8 targets. He secured 3 of them for 25 yards. This was just a gross game, though. Neither offense really inspired much confidence outside of Nico Collins. The positive was, though, the usage he saw right out of the gate. I'm not going to lie, this offense does look absolutely terrible, but he should be in a better spot next week with a pass funnel defense of the Titans. Now, I added Tyquan Thornton to this list after this game. While the Chiefs' offense has looked about as bad as it can look, Thornton has been a bright spot. He has now been targeted 14 times in the last 2 games. The Chiefs have primarily utilized him as a deep threat, but he did see a little bit more use on intermediate routes this week against the Giants. He finished with 5 catches for 71 yards and a score. Now, I will say Xavier Worthy is expected back in week 4 against the Ravens, which should help this offense gain some semblance of confidence at this point. But either way, Thornton has some appeal in 12-team leagues moving forward just because of how they're utilizing him. And I don't think this role is going to go away from him. Even once they get guys like Xavier Worthy back, even once they get Rashee Rice back, I think this deep threat role is still going to be there for him. But I think for right now, I think you could utilize him as a flex play. But once you get all these guys back, he probably becomes a little bit more of he's more of just like a best ball play, because at that point, it's going to be really hard to predict on a week-to-week basis when you should use him. Now, I did want to throw on here, I threw on Brandon Ayuk. He is nearing a return in a couple of weeks. He's only rostered 47% of Yahoo leagues. With all the injuries to the 49ers right now, Ayuk should be back over the next few weeks. Obviously, he has one more week left where he's on IR, but after that, I think he was on point to return week 5 or week 6. And if he's sitting out there at this point, I think he's definitely worth a look. Next up is going to be Luther Burden. Burden had his breakout game, catching all 3 of his targets for 101 yards and a touchdown, despite the huge day. I did want to mention he only played 17 snaps compared to 34 to Olamide Zaccheaus. I think at worst he's worth a stash as he likely continues to eat away as Zaccheaus' role and should eventually take over as the team's number 3 wide receiver. We know how explosive Luther Burden is. Going back to college, he was a super explosive yards after the catch guy. We even saw him get a carry today, and I wouldn't be surprised if he started doing a little bit more than that. There was a lot of coach speak this week about Ben Johnson wanting to get Luther Burden more involved within this offense, and we saw it a little bit today. So I do think eventually he's going to overtake Olamide Zaccheaus, and I think he starts playing a lot more in the slot, which we know, and for a Ben Johnson offense, that's what you're looking for. So Luther Burden, I think at the very worst, is worth a stash. Next up is going to be Sterling Shepard, only rostered 1% of leagues. Now, Shepard has drawn 15 targets the last 2 games. Today, he caught 4 of 5 targets for 80 yards against the Jets, but you may be wondering why he's even on here with Chris Godwin due back next week. Well, Mike Evans left with a hamstring injury. Evans has a long history of hamstring issues and likely will keep him out for some time. I wouldn't be surprised at this point if he gets placed on IR, but at the very least, I think he's going to miss at least a couple of weeks, but he very well could be a candidate to go on IR with this injury. But Shepard is deserving of a roster spot in 12-team PPR leagues because I think Chris Godwin's going to get a slow workup. He's not going to go in and just all of a sudden just play all the snaps. I don't see that happening at all coming off the injury that he had. So I think Sterling Shepard is going to continue to see targets within this offense with Baker Mayfield, and with Mike Evans out, I think it's just going to open up more opportunity. Remember, Jalen McMillan is also out until at least week 9 or 10. So there's just not a lot of other options here within this offense. So Sterling Shepard, I think, is at least worth a look at PPR formats. And then again, Trey Tucker, kind of mentioned him. I know people are going to be clamoring for Trey Tucker after his monster performance. He held 8 of 9 targets for 145 yards, 3 touchdowns, 40 PPR points. I went back and forth on where to put him. I ultimately set him as a low end, ad for this week in 12-team leagues. But we should, I do think that we should follow the usage here. He has seen 17 targets the last 2 weeks. He has scored 12 or more fantasy points in 2 of his last 3 games. I just don't know how sustainable this is. We have to remember Brock Bowers is still nursing this injury. He does not look like the same guy. Obviously, Jacoby Myers commands targets ahead of him. But this feels like it's going to be chasing, this. I wouldn't go out and spend like heavy fab. I wouldn't go out and spend, a top waiver priority ad on Trey Tucker. I don't think this is sustainable. I think this is a little bit like Calvin Austin, where there's going to be weeks like Calvin Austin today, had himself a decent game because he caught a touchdown, but it's going to be very inconsistent. And when to know to play him, I think is going to be the problem. And this is why I don't like putting guys like this very high, because we end up spending a lot of fab. We end up spending a high waiver priority for this guy. And I'm like, oh, I want to play him next week. And then he goes out and scores you 3 or 4 points. That's the problem with guys like Trey Tucker. I think he's worthy of an ad in 12-team leagues because of the usage that he's seen the last couple of weeks. I just don't know how sustainable it'll be moving forward. And then lastly, I want to hit on Torrey Horton, only rostered in 2% of leagues. Horton has had the same stat line each of the last 2 weeks. He once again caught 3 or 4 targets for 32 yards and a touchdown. The difference this week, though, he returned a punt for a touchdown, giving him 16 fantasy points. He has now scored. He was second on the team in targets as well. Now, there was only 18 passes going around, so it really wasn't hard to get that point. But I think he's at least worthy of an ad in 12-team or deeper formats with deeper benches. He likely won't score. He's not going to score a touchdown every week, but the talents of rookie wide receiver could provide value as the season goes by. And at the very least, I think he's a nice stash because if something happened to Cooper Kupp, he would immediately step in as the number 2 wide receiver in this offense. And they don't really have a tight end of consequence either. And so it's not hard for him to see. I just can't see Sam Darnold and this offense the way they want to run it, that they're going to be able to support 3 wide receivers on a weekly basis. So I think Torrey Horton's at least worth an ad, but he's not something you're going to directly want to go at and put in your lineup. So I want to mention that as well. Next up, let's move over to our tight ends and let's talk about them. Hunter Henry went back and forth about adding on this because he's, depending on where you look, he's either rostered somewhere between 50 to 60% of leagues, but he had himself a monster day, catching 8 of 11 targets for 90 yards, 2 touchdowns for 25 fantasy points. He was the engine of this offense. No other Patriot had more than 4 receptions or 38 receiving yards. The Patriots offense could maintain control of the ball either, as they fumbled 4 times. And I have no idea. I know this is not regarding the tight end, but I have no idea what Travion Henderson has to do to be able to get extended work. Like it was Ramondre fumbled twice, and then it went to Antonio Gibson. He fumbled, and then they finally decided to go to Travion Henderson at that point. Like this is like the most baffling thing to me, especially with the draft capital they spent on Travion Henderson. But either way, I digress. But that's the reason they lost today is because they couldn't control the ball. I mean, they were moving the ball up and down the field on the Steelers. It was just they kept fumbling the ball, and that's what really cost them this game. But next up, though, is a great matchup against the Panthers, who allowed the third most fantasy points to tight ends, making Hunter Henry a top 12 tight end for week 4. Next up is going to be Britton Strange. Strange caught 6 or 7 targets for 61 yards, 12 fantasy points. The entire offense was terrible, though. In week 3, Strange is one of the few bright spots in this offense. He has now he's now been targeted 16 times over his last 3 games and has scored 8 or more PPR points in 3 straight games as well. While this is certainly not phenomenal production, I still think he is in the landscape, especially right now of tight ends. I actually think that he's a pretty solid streaming option in this matchup against the 49ers next week. He doesn't seem to have a lot of touchdown upside because they don't seem to look for him there, but also the Jaguars haven't really seen a whole lot of trips to the red zone either. So there's that as well. Trevor Lawrence's offense just looks really bad. Brian Thomas, I mean, everybody it all looks bad. But Brenton Strange, at least, seeing consistent targets. He seems to be the safety blanket, much like Evan Ingram was for this offense in the previous season. So next up is going to be Chig Okonkwo, roster in 31% of leagues. This was the best week of the season, or this was his best week of the season, securing 5 of 6 targets for 66 yards for 11 PPR points. He's now been targeted 12 times over the last 2 games. But the Titans consistently playing from behind. Chig continues to see a healthy target share. But next up is a road matchup against the Texans. I think he is also a very solid streaming option in this spot. And then lastly, I did want to put Isaiah Likely on here, rostered in 15% of leagues. Likely is expected to return in week 4 against the Chiefs. We know his history against the Chiefs. He seems to always ball out. And then you have Mark Andrews, who's struggling now. The Ravens have yet to play, obviously, so we'll have to see how that turns out. But either way, Likely is going to step back into a decent role within this offense. And I think he is also very much in play as a streaming option. And honestly, if you have one of those roster spots or you have an IR spot, some way to be able to add him, I wouldn't mind stashing him if you're in need of a tight end ahead of next week, because we can still do so as that is an option. So other than that, though, that is the last streaming option I really have at tight end this week. Let's see. Let's jump over and answer a couple of these questions. Kevin, I'm glad you told me to pick up Jackson Dart, my Superflex League. Ross needs to be benched after that. Yeah, he is so bad. So bad right now. Yeah, I don't know what they're doing. I know he went out and had that huge game last week, but I don't care. Russell Wilson is terrible. There's no reason he should be out there right now. And I was shocked they didn't at least give him an opportunity late in that game to see what he could do. Obviously, Russell Wilson is not it. And I get their schedule is not great, but they do get a couple better matchups moving forward. But Jackson Dart was absolutely electric in the preseason. And this is a coaching staff that's fighting for their job. I mean, they couldn't do absolutely nothing tonight against the Chiefs. And let's face it, the Chiefs' offense was not great in this game. I mean, they had plenty of opportunities and just couldn't do anything. So, should I trade Marvin Harrison and Joe Mixon for Terry and Genty? Yeah. I mean, Joe Mixon, I don't think he's even playing this year. So, you're really just trading Marvin Harrison for Terry and Genty. So, yeah, I'm doing that. No problem. I know Genty hasn't been great, but I don't care. Like, you're really just trading Marvin Harrison for those two. So, yeah, I would do that all day. Which wide receiver did you love Fab on? Uh, I mean, it's hard to say without knowing like what all wide receivers are available. But as far as the guys that I have mentioned, I don't know if I would say that I would go out and like unload a ton of Fab on any of them. Like Elakeo Manor, for example, right? Like I think he's somebody that I don't think you need to go and spend a ton of Fab to be able to get him. Like I don't think it's a tough he's not going to take a ton to acquire. Like you probably could put a 5-10% fab budget or fab claim on him and probably be able to get him. But none of these wide receivers, I think, stand out to me as like, oh, you have to go and load the clip. Like I'm only doing that for certain plays, and right now, it's Trey Benson. Like Trey Benson is easily that guy. Now I know for a lot of people, that's because he's rostered 50% of leagues that he's just not sitting out there for most people. But in the event that he was, like yes, like he deserves that. There's not many wide receivers though right now, at least early in the year, that I would feel comfortable with saying that about. I don't think any of the guys on here are players that you need to go spend a heavy fab for. But like I said, Elakayo Manor is my favorite one, just because I think there's a lot of upside here within him. I would probably limit him to like 12 to 15% at most, and I think that's high. I don't think you need to get that high. I would say 10% of whatever your fab budget is probably gets it done. Darnell Mooney, Christian Kirk, I think those guys are probably in like the 5 to 7% range. I had questions about their offenses, but I think they're going to be useful enough. Especially Christian Kirk. CJ Stroud, that offense, Nick Caley, all this stuff. Like it looks really, really bad right now outside of Nico Collins for this offense. And I know it's only 3 games, and things could get better. But right now, I mean, oh my goodness, like it was brutal watching some of these offenses right now. So, yeah. Trey Junkins, I have Strange at the moment for Tyler Warren, who wins. I think it really depends on what it is you're needing and where. I think for most people, Junkins probably is like a RB4, RB5. But I'll say Junkins looked really damn good today. And I originally had put out a video early, well before he got suspended, for all the stuff or not suspended, before the stuff came out about his, whatever stuff off the field, like that. I was really excited about. I was really excited about Junkins and I thought what he could do within this offense, and we kind of saw it today. Like he looks explosive, he looks really good. Like I don't want to trade Junkins if I don't have to, but if you're desperate for a tight end, like obviously I love Tyler Warren, and I think this offense is going to be really good for most of the year. So I don't hate it, but it really just depends on what it would leave you with. We picked up Wicks this morning. Do we hold him or start against Dallas? Other wide receivers I have are Thornton and Travis Hunter. So this was a ugly game for the Packers. Or the Packers passing offense was absolutely dreadful. I mean, respect to Cleveland. I mean, their defense is really good. Like we have to give some credit to how good this defense is for the Cleveland Browns. I mean, the Browns defense has been really good for a while. And so I think when you look at it on the surface, I think you can hold Wicks. Like I think there's better times coming. Like this whole, I mean, there's no judging this entire offense, because really, I mean, what they scored 10 points in this game. This offense looked absolutely dreadful, which is wild considering the week before this offense looked super explosive. But I don't know if they just went into this game thinking they actually had this one in the bag and didn't have to do anything for it. I don't know. But either way, I would still probably hold Wicks considering what the other options you have. But I think it really just depends on. I think it really just depends on what else is out there. Like I said, some of these other options when it comes to Wicks. But I will also say, I mean, we also saw, look how bad Dallas. I mean, we just saw Dallas, 2 weeks ago, let Russell Wilson look like just prime Joe Burrow or something out there throwing 400 yards, and then we saw this week, Caleb Williams, who struggled a little bit through the first couple of weeks, just go out there and just absolutely dice that defense up. I mean, their defense is incredibly bad. I think the Packers are in for a credible spot next Sunday night where they're going to be able to bounce back. So I would take that into consideration as well. Was offered too early 2027 first for Charbonnet. Should I accept? Yeah, I mean I would for sure. I mean without even thinking about it. For Zach Charbonnet, absolutely and I can get 2027 first. I'm doing that without hesitation. Which wide receiver to add? Well, I don't know if CeeDee Lamb's going to be out. I mean I CeeDee Lamb, like I wouldn't be surprised if he plays in this game against the Packers. I mean, I know he wasn't able to make it back, but I think after a week of rehab and everything else, like I would be surprised. Um, it, I would be surprised if he missed, but if he did, it probably be like Jalen Tolbert. You also have Cavante Turpin. who I know that they've been utilizing a little bit as well. But I'll be real, if they don't have CeeDee Lamb, I don't really feel great about this offense going up against the Packers, and the Packers defense right now. Uh, I mean, they were only able to put up 14 points today. Uh, it's a lot of it wasn't Dak. Some of it wasn't Dak Prescott's fault. There was an interception he threw that bounced right off of George Pickett's hands. That shouldn't have been an interception. And it really worries me though against this Packers team though if CeeDee Lamb doesn't play. So I don't know if there's anybody that I would like think that you have to add, but it probably would be like Jalen Tolbert or Turpin. Parker Washington, yeah. I mean, he seems to be one of Trevor Lawrence's favorite targets, but this looks terrible. I mean, this offense looks terrible. I mean, and I know the Texas defense is good, and we should give them some credit. And I'm not saying that this like that certainly played a factor into it of why this offense looked the way that it is. But I mean, nobody really looks good in this offense, and Trevor Lawrence doesn't look great, and Brian Thomas looks like a ghost. I mean, Travis Hunter hasn't been utilized. I mean, it's been really bad so far, and I guess you could look to add Parker Washington, but if you're in like a 12-team league, I don't know when you'd ever look to actually start Parker Washington. Should I trade away Lad? Should I trade Lad away for QJ? I'm in a 12-team dynasty. No, I don't think that I would. It's been wild though for through 3 weeks. I mean, it really looks like Lad McConkey. I know it was a tougher matchup against the Broncos today, but I mean, I will all respect to the world, Quentin Johnson. It really looks like he's figured it out. He looks a lot better. But like I think for the long term, I still think Lad McConkey is a very good wide receiver. And I think he's still better than Quentin Johnson. I probably wouldn't do it if it was me. But I will say, I've been really impressed with Quentin Johnson over the first 3 weeks of the season, and looks like he might have figured it out. Cleveland did every week start. No, it, I have a lot of respect for the Browns, and I think the Browns defense is probably better than, and I think they're probably a consideration at least for most weeks to be like a top 12 defense. It's really going to depend on the matchup, but there's other matchups where this is not going to be as good. But right now, this defense is very good. They're great against the run. You cannot run against them, and they are awesome at getting to the quarterback. Like, I mean, obviously when you have Miles Garrett and some of the other pieces here, but it's a shame because of how bad the offense really is. If they just had a quarterback, how what this team could look like. And so hopefully they eventually figure this thing out and they are able to figure out a quarterback because they have a lot of pieces with this team. I mean, even offensively, Cedric Tillman has flashed, Jerry Judy, with Harold Fannin. Like, there's a lot to like with this team. It's just the quarterback they've not been able to figure out. But I would not say they're an every week start. There's definitely going to be weeks where they are definitely in play, but I wouldn't say they're like an every week set it and forget it type defense where you're just going to walk away from. So, all right. That being said, I'll go ahead and get out of here. Way longer than I was really wanting to go here, but always like trying to answer all of our questions. Is Trey Tucker worth a stash? I guess like a 12-team leagues and above, sure. If you wanna take a stash at him, I just don't know consistently you're ever gonna know really when to play him. I know the last 2 weeks has been good, but I just don't know if I can trust him every single week. We've kind of done this right each of the first 3 weeks with Troy Franklin and Calvin Austin and guys that have a spike week out of nowhere, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I want to go out and pick these guys up, and a lot of times they just don't end up paying off. You never end up really wanting to play them. So I guess with bye weeks coming up, maybe you could add them and kind of see how things continue to play out for Trey Tucker. But I don't think he's a priority. Let me put it that way. Yeah, appreciate you guys. And again, let's go ahead and get out of here. I will be back again soon. We're going to combine the defense and kicker streaming video, so we'll have that all together. I am looking forward to that. So we'll have that back, kickers and defenses together in one, and then we'll be back with our other stuff that we normally do, and then we'll be back Wednesday night to go live. Thoughts on the Patriots backfield? I think it's only a matter of time before you have to give Travion Henderson a real look at this offense. All right, on offense. I don't know how much longer we can keep doing this, but they say they need Ramondre Stevenson, and I don't get it. I really don't understand what they're doing over there. But Yeah, I guess for right now it's still going to be Ramondre Stevenson, but eventually Travion Henderson has to get more looks because it's the running backs costed the game today. I mean, Stevenson fumbled twice, and then you had Antonio Gibson who fumbled as well. 3 of the 4 fumbles came from the running backs. I don't know what's going on. I don't have no idea why they spent such a high pick, second round pick on Travion Henderson if they have no desire to use him. That's my problem. So, anyways, go ahead and get out of here. Again, if you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below. We'll sure to get to them. I help you guys out, and we will see you on the next one. Bye.